This is the Compounding Change Podcast, sharing stories of small but meaningful changes that compound into amazing impact. Brought to you by Shannon Davis and DavisCompoundingChange.com. Change happens fast. Take advantage. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to DavisCompoundingChange.com or this podcast. Now, here's your host, Shannon Davis.
Hi, this is Shannon Davis with Compounding Change. We're here with Jenna Stoliker. Thanks, Jen, for coming back. I appreciate it. I just want to introduce you. Welcome to another episode of Compounding Change, where we explore how small shifts in mindset, habits, and behavior lead to profound transformation in our lives. We had talked about a few things last time about self-sabotaging. So our guest, Jenna Stoliker, is a renowned leadership coach specializing in empowering women in the workplace. Jenna has an incredible blog post that I've enjoyed reading titled Decoding Self-Sabotage, Unraveling the Human Condition. That's a mouthful, where she breaks down subtle ways we hinder our own success and how we can overcome these self-imposed obstacles.
Thank you,
Jenna, welcome again to the show. Excited to have you share some insights. Last time we talked on a more personal level, but this I kind of wanted to focus on the self-sabotaging. I had gone through your class, your course, which is PQ.
So we use PQ as a real short way of saying it's a focus on positive intelligence. Of course, like my blog post, right? It can get a little wordy. I had renamed it Chart Your Path to Emotional Wisdom, because I feel like because that makes it so much clearer, right?
Up a lot,
that will probably evolve over time.
Right.
However, the whole purpose of that was the mindset and how we have our mindsets kind of shaped and how they're formed really impacts our life. So we use PQ as the shortcut because it's around positive intelligence. And let me also be clear, the positive intelligence isn't about having a false sense of happiness or not addressing some of the other more challenging emotions that may arise. Right? So we don't want to sweep things under the rug. What we're actually looking at is how can we be effective and move through this world more gracefully and with greater compassion for ourselves, for others, for the situation at hand. That gets all wrapped up into this practice around positive intelligence. So that may have been more of a mouthful that you wanted me to share, but.
Well, so with the PQ, with that course, are you still operating that course along the same fashion, or do you do something different? I remember feeling that a little bit of it at first seems hokey or silly, but it was helpful. And I think in our conversation, and what I recall is about the triggers and the patterns and about looking back at your childhood and not delving up like this whole psychoanalysis of, what did your mom or dad do to you? But can you just explain some effective strategies for identifying these triggers, or give more insight to the whole course itself?
Absolutely. And the coach in me wants to say, what felt hokey or, odd for you? Because, this is also about like knowing what is true for you and what resonates with each person, or for you, for yourself. What kind of felt hokey for you?
Right. Well, and I shouldn't even say it like that. You know my personality, and it's the difference. And of course, I relate everything to the gym, CrossFit, or to money and finance, or to church and God, right? And it all comes together. And that's why I even chose the name for this podcast of Compounding Change, because it's not just about the power of compounding your money, right? It's about your physical fitness and those little steps along the way that, you didn't gain 100 pounds overnight. You don't become rich overnight unless you win the lotto. And you don't just change your deep-seated issues overnight either. So that's why I loved your course. But, I guess some of the reflection, I think it puts people in an uncomfortable place, but I do believe you have to go to an uncomfortable place to make some change.
So let me just, I'm still trying to pull the thread through, and I want to make sure I'm tracking. So yes, to your question, do I still offer that program? I do, even though I mentioned I might change the name. And I think that's just a recognition of how things evolve, right? What we know to be true, and this is for anybody listening, is what you knew even a year ago, but especially 10, 15 years ago, has probably changed or probably evolved.
Right.
So yes, I still offer the program. I do it in partnership with the Positive Intelligence community and Shirzad Shamin, who's really the founder of this body of work. Yes, the program will put people into maybe an uncomfortable space, but that's where growth and development reside, right? And I say this just really for anybody, is whenever you're faced with something new or you're learning something new, especially when it's in the construct of a workshop or some sort of a class, you don't have to agree with everything. But here's the beautiful part of that development is take yourself into that place. And if there's something that you don't agree with, or maybe there's a practice or an exercise that is offered, at least try it. Make it an experiment, because what you're doing in that moment is trying to ascertain for yourself or discern for yourself what is most true for you. That is where their growth resides. Right. And so the program that I offer in this fashion, when we do that shortcut PQ, is an 8-week focus on, we call it mental fitness. All right. And so everything that we do is based on how we perceive our world. Well, and how do we perceive our world? It is formed from childhood upbringing, right? I mean, just as kids. And you had mentioned, what you kind of liked about the program is it doesn't take you all the way back to well, tell me about how you were raised. It doesn't, but there is an acknowledgement that we have, and I refer to this as the saboteurs, right? There's also if you're familiar or have experienced any kind of other therapeutic ways of healing, there's internal family systems. There's a lot of similarities with that, basically saying we aren't just one kind of an entity. There are different parts to us. Some of these parts have been formed early on in our upbringing, and whatever our family system was, our actual family system of who raised us, who was around us, siblings or nieces, cousins, aunts, you name it, impacts how we view this world. And I think you and I talked about this in the past too, about the values that get formed. Our values are sometimes our core values, but they can also very easily be acquired values. All of these things we take on, and it shapes how we view the world. It shapes how we view ourselves. And the saboteurs are really parts of ourselves that are here to protect us. Because if you think about it as a young kid, we're trying to navigate this unknown world. We have some rules, probably from teachers or parents or parental figures, that tell us what to do. And in the most simplest form, it's this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong. It's helpful at a certain stage in our development when we're really young to keep things simple. But life is a little bit more complex than that. And we as human beings are much more multidimensional than that. So there comes a time in our lives when we realize what we learned or how to navigate this world is actually not fully serving us. That's us exploring now. So what are some of these things that seem to have been working until they're not working anymore? That's what we're calling these saboteurs. And understanding. So what is it about myself and my thought process that could be holding me back from happiness and from being much more positive? All right. I'm going to pause here because I could totally go on and on. I don't know if there's other questions you have.
No, there's triggered terms or key terms that people like to use, and you do hear that, and I use it in my business too, but what's holding you back? I mean, that's the biggest thing. And so to get at the crux of that can be beneficial in your personal life. Or, I mean, I've done it in working with people with personal training, working with people in finance. What's holding you back? Because there's always something that applies to in your business, in your personal. Why are you eating too much? Why aren't you eating enough? Why are you exercising so much? Whatever that may be. But just to have some takeaways, can you share some practical tips on how an individual can shift or sustain over time?
Yeah.
With
Absolutely. So it does begin with, a lot of self-reflection and increasing your self-awareness, right? So in the context of, I think, while we're talking is that, that one blog post I had written that really kind of intrigued you about like our self-sabotaging behaviors, that's increasing your awareness around. So what are the things, like what's my mindset or my thought process about a situation or about a person that I have to interact with that just isn't so effective? And we could always finger point and say, well, it's that person, the way they do that. But certainly it's causing us to respond in a particular way that isn't effective. So what's that all about?
Yep.
That's what we start to uncover for our saboteurs. So you could go through this in a variety of ways. The way I work with the clients that come to me is I love to use assessments because it creates a kind of a common language for us to now focus on what are the things that might be holding you back or what's your preferred communication style. And so there is an assessment I use within the PQ program, the Chart Your Path to Emotional Wisdom. And that is to help you really identify these certain aspects of you that are most prevalent, right? And there are a number of saboteurs that kind of have think of like a play. You have all these different characters. There's a judge, right? Everyone has the judge, right? We're like, this is good, this is bad, this is right, wrong. I'm better. They're
some
less.
of us more than others.
Right? But it's not just
that was
it's not just the judge. It's like almost like these other characters, these other parts of us. I don't know how. Let me see if I can rattle them all off. There's like 9 other parts, right? You've got the avoider, you've got a controller, hypervigilant, hyperachiever. Let's see here. Hyper rational. You've got a stickler, a pleaser, a restless, and a victim. I think I got them all. But all they can kind of work together to create the way you look at the world. That's one of the starting points. Figure out what that is. And that can be really intriguing for some people. They love that. And we're like, that's fantastic, but there's a next step. And that next step is, so how do you make the shift now that you know who your saboteurs are, internally, who your saboteurs are? How do you, I say, how do you reassign them a job description so that they work for you now at this stage in your life?
Right.
And that is what this, the whole process is. How do we become more wise? How do we become more sage and use the power or the energy around how do I empathize more, right? How do I activate good intentions and good actions so that I'm much more effective and I'm, in service to what is in front of me? How do I access my creativity? How do I innovate? Given the situation where I might feel stuck, what else might be possible, right? So there's a number of sage powers, as we kind of refer to them in this context. How do I make that leap? How do I bridge that?
Well, and I know that you mostly deal with leaders, but we've talked about this before, your blog posts or just conversation or the PQ, all of that though, again, like everything with compounding change, that relates to your personal life, your relationships with your children. I mean, nobody's life is no two people's life, even when you're in the same family, as we know, is the same experience. So it's interesting. And it was interesting to have conversations with you about that, incorporating this to just see, what's your reality? What's your perspective of our childhood? Because your childhood's different than mine, even though we're close in age. So I think that that's helpful because you work with professionals, but anybody in any type of job can apply this to somebody else. I think it does. It's exactly what you said, the empathy. Yeah. And if you recognize some of these things, don't you think that it might give you more compassion or empathy for your coworkers.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Because when you start to recognize the parts of you that can hold you back, you start to recognize the saboteurs in others. And it's not so much about knowing exactly which saboteur is at play right now, but you really start to see behavior in others in a different way. And you're like, oh, that person's reacting. And we've talked about this in the past too. There are things that people will say or do that kind of trigger you to respond a certain way. When you start to really recognize for yourself what triggers you, all of a sudden you realize, wait a minute, if I'm responding, if I'm getting triggered, am I like more of a reactionary response? In what ways am I responding really from my saboteur versus the whole truth, the divine part of who I am? And that also means if I'm responding from my saboteur, I'm actually interacting with the other person's saboteur. So when we think about relationships and how do we build trust and how do we build really authentic relationships, you have to come from a very authentic place yourself. And that means not coming from the place of responding with your saboteur.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not sure if I
Well,
answered
and
your
that's,
question.
no, you did, but that's where I think that is so beneficial, because again, it's about those little changes that you do. And even if you don't remember from a day-to-day basis, I mean, we all have a fresh start tomorrow. Well, we hope we do, but have a fresh start tomorrow. So it's just like when people are with their diet, just because you had that ice cream cone doesn't mean that the whole day is shot, right? You can still do. So just because you mess up with one person or express that anger on the road doesn't mean that the rest of your day is ruined and you can be jerked all day because tomorrow's a new day. So you can keep going. But I think when you have those tools that you try to give to people, then that's very inspirational and very helpful.
Thank you for that. And yes, I will say it is always about a resetting, right? So having grace means coming back to grace, right? And so in the practices, like if we want to really tripping over my words, if I really want to ground the practice in something very practical and in small shifts, it can be a quick mindfulness practice, right? So before I engage in a conversation with somebody, let me take a deep breath. Let me focus on something in the room, right? And the way I focus on that might be, I'm just going to scan my environment and look for anything that has a rounded shape to it. What I'm really doing is I'm training my brain to just be hyper focused on a particular thing and notice things differently. Notice something new. It takes 10 seconds. I mean, you could take longer if you wanted to. And then the other practical thing is, as you prepare for a conversation with somebody who may be challenging, you be thinking about what it is that they may say or how might they respond and how might you actually get hooked or triggered. And so you're just aware of that, right? So it's not a surprise. You're not doing a knee-jerk reaction to something. You're like, if they say this, how do I want to respond in a way that feels very true to me and honors that other person? You're really kind of playing that out in your head. It's like what a lot of athletes will do, right? Like how effective is an athlete if they just kind of run out onto the field and just try and like move the ball down the field? They're kind of going through the motions ahead of time. That's what we do with our relationships and how we communicate. Practice it, foresee it. Yeah.
Yep. Like anything. Practice, right?
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you want? I mean, I could go on and maybe we talk again about this specific stuff. I think it's one of those things that when you love something or need something in your life, you want to share it, not in not pointing the finger like, oh, this person needs it, this person needs it. It's just that when I find benefit in it, I want to share that. So I appreciate you giving me that opportunity to share this with other people. And I hope that they can reach out to you. We'll include that information too. But is there anything that you want to leave anybody with that you think is profound and insightful?
For my profound and insightful in this moment, I think I would say, know that you are ever evolving and growing, and it does take practice, but just be true to yourself. Give yourself some of that grace that I had mentioned earlier. And that really just means going back and resetting and being like, okay, that time I did not respond the way I wanted to respond. Well, I learned from it. What would I do differently next time? And if you're putting that kind of a reflective practice into your everyday actions, you will grow. You will grow into the human being that you really want to be. Right. And if you do want to uncover what are some of the things holding you back, I would say you can reach out to me. I'm always happy to have a little strategy call with folks, help them uncover what is holding them back.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I know it's our personal thing, but I've always called you my butterfly because I think you have evolved and grown. And I think that that's a true thing for a lot of us is that, if you look for that in somebody, you're going to see it, and that we've all evolved from that cocoon and become a butterfly the older we get. Right. I hope that's the case with others, but I know it is with you. So thanks again. Yes. Right. Thanks again.
Until next time.
Exactly. So this has been Compounding Change. I'm Shannon Davis with Jenna Stoliker. Join us next time on the Compounding Change podcast. More stories of individuals who have made meaningful change in their lives and careers through small, consistent actions. Until next time, thank you.
This has been the Compounding Change podcast with Shannon Davis. If you're a firefighter or first responder, you know that change happens fast. Life changes, finances change, compounding change. Shannon Davis is a certified retirement counselor who understands the needs of Ohio Association of Professional Firefighters members. Click on daviscompoundingchange.com to learn more. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA, SIPC. Cambridge Investment Research and Retirement Planning Advisors are not related to daviscompoundingchange.com or this podcast. Please note that investment involves a risk, and no statements made in this recording are indicative of future performance. Thank you for listening to the Compounding Change podcast. Compounding Change is brought to you by Shannon Davis and daviscompoundingchange.com.